Hi folks, welcome back. We're going to do a bit of a short one tonight. Well, hopefully it's not too long. May interest a few of you. We're going to do a kingpin rebuild on the front knuckle for the last knuckle that's got to go on the Studebaker. They're actually a really nice knuckle to do, a lot easier than the early Holden ones and stuff like that. So I've done the dirty work. We've cleaned all the grease and the road grime off the knuckle. So basically it's ready to start coming apart. So I'll bring you over here and show you what we got, and then we'll get into the vise. Okay, so this is the driver's side knuckle off the Studebaker. So that's the way it sits in the car there. That's obviously your upper outer pivot, so where a ball joint on a later model car would be. And down there, that's the threaded pivot for the lower control arm outer, and obviously your tie rod connector. So what we've got to do at the moment is get the grease circ fitting out of the side there, and then get it over in the vise. And I've had this undone already. We undid that when it was on the car because it was easier to support. And we've got to drive that bottom pivot off of that the main kingpin. That's got a keyway on it, and it's not supposed to be too tight of a fit. It's just an interference fit, but they've been on there for God knows how long. So the last one was a bit of a bugger to get off, but it did come off. We'll get it over set up in the vise, and we'll see if we can drive that one off. Okay, so I'll apologise for the lighting at the moment. The spotlight above the bench is dead. So we've got the third arm in the vise to hold it. We've been soaking that with WD so it can get up near the keyway. And what we're going to do is take our 4-pound mini sledge on one side to absorb the hit, and use our dead blow on the other side. Try and shock it to get it to come. And then we'll give it a bit of a persuade to move down. Not left-handed. There we go. That one come a lot easier than the other one. I just don't want to drive on the end because I don't want to compress the threads because I don't have a thread chaser that size. So cool. Could actually get on this side. Oh, a couple more. That's it. Cool. So that's our lower pivot. So the lower control arm comes up, and there's a threaded bush / nut. So the external one cuts the thread into the arm, holds it in. Internal thread works on the pivot, and then that gives you your greasable pivot for the bottom pivot, bottom ball joint, whatever you want to call it. So now the kingpin should come free of the knuckle. And there's our kingpin, larger bush surface area at the top. The bottom one on this one is actually a needle roller cage that supports on the bottom. And then the bottom part that the steering flange, or the pivot flange, locks onto. At the bottom, there's a O-ring just to retain the grease in there and keep it sealed. Okay, so laid out here, we've got our kingpin upright, spindle for the wheel bearing and brakes, and the third arm for the steering. Now, that light's going to be terrible, but that is the That's the bottom, and inside there is a needle roller cage, and that's the top, and you can just make out the bush inside there, and then the rest is just a cavity for the grease to work its way through. That's our keywayed lower pivot. It goes onto the bottom of our upright, and they're the outer pivot bushes for our lower arm outers. I'm going to get this over to the parts cleaner and wash up all those parts internally, and then we'll knock out the bush and the bearing out of there, and we're ready to start putting new parts together. Rightio, so here's all of our bits that have been blown apart and cleaned, and some of our new bits. So what we've got, if I can get out of your light, is a new upper bronze bush, the new lower needle roller, and at the top, that goes onto the top of the spindle and supports the weight of it, there's a thrust bearing up the top there. I've repacked that with grey moly grease, and everything else has been washed up, ready to go. So I'm going to press the bronze bush and the bearing into the spindle, just a little hand press, and once I've got them in there, we're going to pack them with grease, grease the shaft, then we'll take it over to the vise and we'll show you them starting to go back together. Nothing real tricky about these, other than the fact that if you look at them, and it's probably not going to show on this, if I go, there we go, that's got a machine taper on it, and that's square. So obviously the machine taper is to assist you with getting it in. So that's going to go up there, and we're just going to press that down even and flat with light pressure till it's flush with the top. The caged roller has got on one side of it, you can barely see it on that side, but on this side it's got some part numbers, and that's the side I'm normally going to leave out. So once the bronze bush is in, we'll take this needle roller, sit him there, and a flat plate, press it down in nice and even so it goes flush, and then we'll take a socket the right size to run on the outer edge so we don't crush it and pin the rollers, and recess it in far enough so that our O-ring can sit down in there and be just ever so proud of the top face there, so that way when that goes on, clamps it all together and holds all the water and dirt out. So we'll get it over to the press and we'll put them in. Okay, so I'll sit that in there, flat, piece of plate on there, and we'll drop it everywhere. Oh, you idiot. Too far. Okay. And you shouldn't feel any real resistance putting it in. It's an interference fit, but it shouldn't be tight. If it is, you've got an issue. So okay, that's flush. So that's all flush with the top. We'll get our bearing, which was that way. this there. And we'll do this to start it, so it goes in square. Because with a flat plate on there, it's just a whole lot easier to hold true, get it square and set it in flush rather than a socket. So that's bottomed. And then we'll swap the plate out for our socket. And now the key here is we only want to go far enough for a recess for the O-ring. I'll grab the O-ring. Okay, got to go about that much again. Okay, and with that in there, the O-ring is just proud of the bottom face there, and when it all bolts together, that'll be our dust and water seal. So let the pressure off the press. And we'll go back over to the table. Okay, so we've got that all pressed together. Before we go running over to the vise and sliding it all together, we're going to get some more of this molly grease and just going to grease up that bottom Torrington roller and try and fill that cavity just above it. Some on our bush. And the tiniest bit on that top face where our shims are going to run. Now our shims are part of this bearing face that's going to sit on there. They are what sets the preload when we tighten it all up. And it's also what sets whether there's any play in there or not. So the kit does come with new ones. I always start with the ones that were originally in the car, because this one looks to have had all original kingpins and everything in it. It doesn't look like it had been done before, and the original ones were good when it was new. So if everything's been made to spec, they should be good now. So they go in there. And they slide up on there. And we'll give that pin a bit of a grease. where it's going to run on the bearing and the bush. Okay, so now we're going to go hold it in the vise and start sliding this together. So I'll move these over there and we'll get that sorted. Okay, so we've got our kingpin upright secured into the vise by the upper pivot, and our bearing, top bearing assembly is on there. So now, with the pin all greased and the bushes greased, we're going to drop this on. Yep, so I've got the thrust washers on there as well. And take that grease back down in. Wipe off any excess. Take our O-ring seal and get that to sit down home. Bit of grease on that face. Now, our lower retainer. Onto the keyway. Where'd I put my hand? There we go. That shouldn't take any force at all to drive down. Okay, that's good. Clean up any excess for the moment. And then we'll pop our grease circ back in the spindle. And washer. And lastly, a cast load nut, which will do we just go firm and it's bottomed? And now before that used to float, well, it's upside down, but it used to float up and down. And when you grabbed the wheel when it was on the car, it had like wheel bearing free play in it. And that, with fresh bushes and bearings, is all tight again. So now we'll find our split pin hole. done. That's a kingpin refresh on a Studebaker front spindle. I'll get a grease gun, we'll pop a bit in there while it's on the bench because it'll be easier to get to. Started to come through. Okay. Now, get that to release. Again, we'll get rid of the excess that came through from the bearing when we greased it. We're done. It's ready to go back on the car. I've actually got a bit of spare time. I don't have to leave just yet, so we might actually turn this around and get that on the car and show you how these lower pivots work. It's basically a hardened pin with the threaded nuts that I showed you that screw into the control arm, and the internal and external thread is your pivot point with Zerk fittings again, so it's got a full layer of grease around it, so it pivots in grease. Same principle as an early Falcon XR through to XB, upper inner control arm pivot. If they're freshly greased all the time, they last for years. I've had a set in the XW wagon up there for 19 years now, and they're still going strong. No squeaks, no free flow. So, all right, we'll get this on the car. Okay, so Tom's gotten the upper and lower control arms rebushed with fresh rubber bushes earlier on the Savo, so we're all good to go. This lower one, so if we get, where am I? It's going to sit like that. So first things first, we've got to get this in. And by memory, it was a bit of a bugger. Trying to remember which way. There we go, that way. So that's sitting in there. And we grab our nuts or outer bushes. Now, I have always done it, don't know whether it's right or wrong, but it's lasted for years in the XW. Use a nickel anti-seize or a copper anti-seize, whatever you've got, on the thread pivots. When I'm assembling, it's nice and thick and it stays there, it doesn't wash away. And then when you grease them, you just use your normal grey moly grease for your ball joints and stuff like that. So, oh, where's our dust seals? Nearly forgot them. How did they come out now? Break. Always forget to put those seals on. So we want that one. easier if that arm bracket was tighter. Always left it a bit loose. You son of a... Really damn hard. Leave that upper arm so loose. Sorry, that lower arm. Do it this way. There. Compress that. And turn that. And then try and squeeze that seal in there without tearing it because it's prehistoric. Or actually, through that way. Yep. Okay, so now that we've got the seal back on there, now we'll grab the nuts. And we'll loosely start it on the thread of the pin first, evenly. So that's one turn on the back one. One turn on the front one. One turn on the back one. Turn on the front one, feed it back through. Only reason I do it this way is I want to have even amount of thread in both pivots. One turn there. Until the outer thread catches in both sides at the same time. There we go. So the outer thread on both nuts is caught onto the face of the arm at the same time, and both inner threads are wound on the same amount, because we still have to remember that joint has to pivot. So now what we're going to do is take the front one, half one, and that started it in the arm. And we're going to go half one on the back one. These would normally have been done up tight. They were tight on that one the other day, but the boys have left them loose because they just loosely put them in. But so it's making it a bit more awkward. So if we now go that one, No, cool. Extra. Back to this one. Okay, so that's bottomed. So you just got to be careful you don't cross thread them in. That's why you start evenly, get them both start. They'll actually act as a guide and hold it in there square. And they're like a really big self-tapping thread. It's not a proper thread, kind of like a Mopar up a ball joint. It's a pretty sketchy thread. So that's now seated. Not tight enough, but it's seated. This one is seated. We're going to get a bigger ratchet. These won't be final tightened until the spring's in and it's all up and it's holding, and then I can tighten it up like I did the other side. But for now, so that's tight enough for now. And so now we've got, obviously when it's in the upright position, so sitting up like that, got our steering and then the pivot there. So we've got to get our spring up in and then assemble the top one. I'll take these around the other side because it's fully assembled and show you. That actually gives you your camber adjustment in and out and your caster adjustment backwards and forwards through one of the Zerk fittings. Okay, so this is the left-hand side and it's fully assembled. So what we have in there is essentially the exact same pivot assembly as the lower, same that we just put together on the other side, but with one difference. That upper pin, don't know if that'll focus for us, is that, and it's an eccentric cam with threads at either end that go into your outer pivots. So when the car's on the aligner, this pinch bolt goes through that center groove there. So it won't let it go left and right. It'll let it rotate once you undo it and loosen it off, but it won't move back and forth. So as you turn it in the thread, I'll stop dropping stuff in a second. So once you crack that off, you take that Zerk fitting out and chuck a 1/4 inch Allen key into the end. And in the end of this shaft, at the front face, where the grease goes in, is a 1/4 inch Allen key drive. So then you wind your shaft, and that'll then let that upper knuckle pivot go backwards in the threads, forward in the threads for your pos caster, negative caster, and for every 180 degrees rotation, it'll go either full pos or full neg camber. So your camber will be maxed out the same no matter what, either way, and then you stop it when you get your camber and caster to the balance that you want. Then you lock your pinch bolt, put your zerk back in, shot of grease, and your wheel alignment's done, bar adjusting your toe down at your tie rod ends. So really good setup. The GM ones that I have done on the early Holdens from the 50s had like a hex drive in there that you had to get an open end spanner and grind them down and make them fit and try and wedge in there while you got the wheel on, and it's just a nightmare to align. This looks to be a lot easier. Whether it is or not, once we get it up on the aligner, we'll be able to tell. But that's what we have to assemble on the other side once we get the spring and the shocker in. So that's where we're going to leave that one for now. Okay, so we're going to leave that one there for now. We just got to finish assembling that driver's side the same as the passenger side is and get the wheels on and get it up on the aligner. So, but that honestly has to be the easiest set of kingpins I've ever done. Whether it be early Ford two-wheel drive F trucks, the early Holdens, any of that late model reproduction stuff that they're building for hot rods and T-buckets and stuff like that, that stuff actually is junk. I don't know, you see some of the hot rod shows on TV and the guys are putting the bushes in and the pins and they just tap the pins in gently. I haven't had a customer supply one yet that goes like that. When you put the bushes in, the bronze bushes, normally before the pin will fit, you have to get a ream and then ream the inside of the bush to make it have the right clearance to the pin so it's got grease and doesn't have any play. Some of those hot rod ones that come out for the beam axle front ends, I don't know. They're all made by the same company, or not the same company. The whole kit comes from the one company. The spindle, the bushes, the pins, the seals, the I-beam, the whole lot. And every one a customer's given us to assemble. By the time you get the bushes to the right size, so they fit the pin properly and there's no free play and they just slide together nice, there's near no bronze left on the bush. You've cut through that, you're through to the backing and there's steel. They are junk. So either the pins are made oversized or the bushes aren't made to tolerance, or maybe the holes where the bushes press into are slightly too small. So when you put the bush in there, it actually crushes it up too much and makes the clearance go too tight. I think that might be the problem. The spindles aren't machined to the right size. But this one, factory spindles, factory kingpins, just new bushes, and they work a treat. Didn't have to ream, didn't have to clean, nothing, just put it all together and grease it. So yeah, really nice combo, went together really quickly. So yeah, hopefully that was interesting for someone, not something that we normally get to do a lot of anymore. Don't even really get many F-truck ones through anymore now that the towies aren't using them as chase trucks, but yeah, something different. All right, thanks for sticking around and thanks for watching. See you next time. Bye.